My name is Nicola Baker and I am here at Home Start in Central Lancashire. And within this session today, we're going to be talking about biting. And it can be quite worrying for parents if and when their children start to bite, but it is very much part of children's development as they're starting to learn to express their feelings and starting to learn consequences and starting to express themselves and try to become more independent. Now, biting can be quite common, and it can be common in children under the age of 3, because this is a really key part of children's lives when they do actually struggle to express their emotions. And sometimes when children might be feeling fear or anger, frustration, it can come out in this form of communication, and it can be them kind of telling us that we need some form of attention, something's not quite right, I need you to help me out with something, but I'm not really quite sure how I'm going to tell you that I need this support. Making sure that we correct this behaviour is very, very important, because we need to make it very, very clear to children that biting is not an acceptable form of communication. So to start with, we're going to consider why children might bite. And there could be a whole host of reasons why children bite. And one of the more common ones is when children are in a group with other children and they're struggling to communicate and they're struggling to express themselves. They can also be overstimulated, they could be overwhelmed by the situation, or they could be quite frustrated maybe that they're having to wait their turn or they're having to share a toy, and this kind of emotional overload happens, and that's a way of expressing how they're feeling at that moment in time. It could also be that they're bored, they're anxious, or that they could be physically in pain. It could be something that's happening with their teeth, and they could be teething, and they are then obviously popping something in their mouths to be able to help and assist them with that. Backing onto that, it could be very much a sensory need, and it could be something that children are needing to experience. They might be wanting to put something in their mouth to be able to either explore how it tastes, how it feels, and unfortunately it might be another child or adult that's obviously resulting in that biting action. And we're going to talk about how we can change that sensory need into obviously something else to pop into the mouth later on in this video. Children might also be trying to test the boundaries and see what behaviours that they can get away with. And obviously how we respond to biting might get children a really big reaction, and children will take any attention that's given, and it doesn't have to be necessarily good attention. They will take any that they can possibly get. So if we respond to biting by a big action and loads of attention, they're going to realise that when I do this, all the attention comes to me. So even though it's negative, they're still managing to get adult attention. Again, babies might bite you to test the reaction, and that's where we need to be really quite conscious about picking up on these biting behaviours really quite soon, because whereas we might laugh and maybe joke that babies are biting, we need to make it really quite clear from the offset, because it can be quite difficult to backtrack and kind of re-educate children that we don't accept biting as a form of communication. And it could also be sometimes that maybe children are a little bit lost in what's expected of them at that moment in time. Maybe there's a lack of routine. It can be quite an unpredictable environment. They might find this quite frustrating, and it can unfortunately then result in some sort of physical act, whether that is biting or hitting or punching or kicking. It can be something that happens when children are a little bit too overstimulated. So now let's consider how as parents we're going to respond. Well, it's really, really key that we talk to children and help them to understand their own thoughts and feelings. Because if children are able to understand how they are feeling, then they're going to be able to express this in a different way. And they're going to be able to develop an emotional awareness, which means that they're able to identify what feeling it is that they're feeling, and then they're able to communicate that with adults as they get older. Obviously in babies, anyone that's kind of under the talking age, this is just going to be quite a simple, no, don't do that, and then no further attention that's given to the baby. No laughing, no joking, no kind of drawing big attention to it. Just quite simply, no, don't do that. And we move on, and we give lots of praise and lots of encouragement about something positive that the baby is doing. With toddlers, This is where it's really, really important that we step into any biting behaviours immediately. And as the adult, we need to have a firm but a calm response. We don't need to go, oh my goodness me, they've just bitten somebody, because that is still drawing attention to that action. So it needs to be an immediate, calm, yet firm response, because it is easy to become angry, but we need to keep that inside, okay? And we need to just reconfirm very, very quickly, as soon as we're intercepting into that incident, we do not bite, or stop biting, or biting hurts, or we're quite keen to avoid kind of vague, loose language like, oh, be nice. What does be nice mean? We need to make it very, very clear, we don't bite. Stop biting. Nice and clear, no other dialogue is needed. We are just focusing in on that behaviour. From there, we're going to remove the child from the situation. They might very well, at this moment in time, have a tantrum. There might be arms and legs kicking all over the place, and it's important that we pick them up and we move them to a calm space where the child is then able to express these emotions, where they can also learn from these emotions as well following the incident. Making sure that we give the child as long as it takes them to cool down. Okay, some children at this moment in time might prefer a hug. They might prefer, to cry on parent's shoulder, on carer's shoulder. But it might be that child needs that moment to stomp around and let them know that they're not happy with the response that they've been given. And allow them to do that. Obviously making sure that they're safe and making sure that they're not going to hurt themselves or other people. Allow them to ride that wave so that we can learn from this behaviour. Next, when they're calm, that's our key time to talk to the child about what's happened. If we try talking to them when they're up here, we are not going to get anywhere. And we know that as adults. If you're in the middle of a row or somebody's told you something about your behaviour or your choices, whilst you're in that processing moment, you're not going to listen to what somebody says, okay? You need that moment of calm before we're then able to kind of dissect what's happened in that incident. And it's making sure, again, we're nice and calm, we're using a steady voice, and we're using language that's age appropriate for that child. There's no point going to town on why it's wrong and giving them a life lesson. We've got to remember that these children could be potentially up to the ages of 3 or 4. So we need to make sure that it's very simple language explaining how biting can hurt, and it's not how we treat our friends, and maybe how would you like it if somebody was to bite you. In that, they can get involved in the conversation by asking them how they might feel if somebody bit them, might help the child to reflect. They can be part of that open conversation. And with that, they're then going to be able to respond in a way that, no, I know it wasn't right for me to bite whoever it was that they've bitten, because that would make me feel really sad. Okay? Ensure that the child responds to the child that they've bitten and give them an apology. And making sure in that moment in time, us as parents or carers really give praise and really give all of our attention to the child that's actually been bitten. So that in the child's brain, throughout this process, we've been very sharp, we've been very quick to take attention away from the child. We've removed the child from the situation. We've let them calm down. They've then had a chat about how that action wasn't the best choice that they could make, and now attention's being given to the child that unfortunately was bitten. So here, the child is seeing nothing positive came from this situation, okay? I don't really want to repeat that action again. And never ever bite the child back. We have some parents that say, if you bite them back again, they're less likely to do it. Unfortunately, children copy a lot of their actions from adults, and mirroring this behaviour isn't teaching them what we want them to know. We want them to know that biting is not acceptable in society for anybody, so we're not going to bite them back again as well. So our top tips to be able to avoid biting is to help children to actually understand why they're acting up. So that's us being ahead of the game. Do we know that something's going to trigger the child? Is it a transition to a different activity? Is it sharing that the child might need a little bit of support with? Is it those social skills? What is it that might lead my child to be overstimulated and to obviously result in this type of an action? Is it possible to distract children? If we feel that the tensions are starting to build, can we intercept with a game, a nursery rhyme, moving the child over into a different area? Could they be useful and help you to set a table or to do some sort of activity that might then distract the child from what's actually causing this build up inside? Remember, talk to the child about a biting incident either after the incident has taken place or when you're driving along in the car or when you're having tea. Let's talk again about why we don't bite people. Or biting people can make people feel quite sad. And we have those conversations away from an actual biting incident. Making sure that we support children on learning to actually express themselves and what emotions they might be feeling. So if you spot that the child's feeling happy and they're playing, I can see that you look really happy, you look really calm, and you look like you're playing really well. Or if a child's getting worked up, I can see that you're starting to feel a bit angry, or I feel that you might be a bit overwhelmed. Or if a child sat nice watching TV, I can see that you're really calm. It's really nice to see you looking so relaxed. So that as we label these feelings that children are feeling, when they find themselves feeling these emotions, they're going to be able to tell us what they are. Because let's face it, they're not born knowing what these different feelings mean and how that can impact on us. If it is that children are struggling to share and play, sit down with children and encourage play and maybe be a little bit of a referee when it comes to actually playing and promoting happy and healthy sharing. If it is a sensory need, providing maybe a crunchy snack or something with a different texture that children are able to put in their mouths, or whether it be biting sticks or different, sometimes it can be cloths and material that children like to be able to put into their mouths and have a bit of a chew on for that oral stimulation. Making sure that we're praising good behaviour and not just focusing in on the bad behaviour. If biting's been an issue and this is something that then stops, you are doing so well. Well done for sharing, well done for playing, well done for coming and telling me what you've been feeling. And I suppose the most important one is being consistent. If your child does bite, as a way of expressing their emotions, it might take a couple of times to be able to kind of cancel out these behaviours, because previously we might have paid a lot of attention to biting, and then we need to switch the way that we're handling things as well. So sometimes it does take children quite a few times to learn how to change these behaviours of expression. So being consistent, making sure that nursery, grandparents, anybody that looks after your child are all singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to biting. I really, really hope that you've managed to pick up something positive from today's session. Do appreciate that there was a lot of information, so please re-watch the video again, even in between biting incidents should you need to. There are a lot more YouTube videos available on our YouTube page and also on our website as well at home Start Central Lancashire. And I really hope that some of those also help to support you on your parenting and caring journey. I hope to see you again soon. See you later. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.